think we're live and recording.
Good stuff. Thank you, David. I'm David Chapman. I wanted to welcome everyone to yet another PigNet chat. This one's going to be a little bit more powerful than the pM1 release, but we still have some panelists, and we welcome as many questions from anyone in the audience as they want to throw our way. So let's jump straight into a developer update so that they can get back to work if they're nose to the code. Stephen Masley or Sam Barnes, are you available to give us an update on where we're at development-wise?
Sure. I guess I'll leave that off, and then Sam can follow up. I know he's in here somewhere in the office somewhere. So effectively, after pM1, there was some, some grading things that we were going to address in pM2. So we're going to be releasing a version 2 of the grading formula or algorithm in probably the next week, and that'll change how the PigNet funds are distributed going forward, leave it a bit more fair towards hash power. And then aside from that, we've already started the process of sort of modularizing the code base such that it can be imported into other projects, such as the FAT project, which is the foundation for pM2. And that's where I guess Sam can talk about what that'll be.
Awesome.
Stephen, when you go with this new grading algorithm, currently the top 10 miners are rewarded. Is it going to still be the top 10, or are we going to go with top 25?
Yeah, so we're going with the top 25, and and we're also going to change the payouts. So currently the payouts are on the first miner gets paid more than the last miner in the winning set. In the next grading scheme, the top 25 are paid equally. So that means that we'll see many more. We'll see the funds being distributed more than we see it currently.
Good stuff. Thank you, Stephen. Is Sam available? Would you like to chime in as well?
Yeah, sure. So essentially what I've been working on is just the design around transactions and conversions and the entity structure that those will be taking on chain. And just like Stephen said about modularizing the grading code, we're also working so that this all future transaction related code is going to be in its own packages so that it can also be imported by whether it's the node that needs to keep track of balances for pM2 value or the actual FAT framework itself. So I've been starting on that work and have also been in touch with you around next steps for all of that. So it's still very much in the experimentation and design phase, but now that the infrastructure is getting laid down, it should be a lot quicker to iterate on the design.
Sam, I know that there was a lot of debate regarding whether conversions should go live first, transactions should go live first, or they should go live at the same time. Has that been settled yet? And if so, what way or forward are we going with?
Someone else can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the current plan is to release both conversions and transactions simultaneously.
Sounds good. Thanks for taking the time to give us an update. We appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having us.
All right, so we have Julian Fletcher Taylor from DV Pro, Paul Snow from Jack 17, David Johnson from Young Capital. I think those are our panelists, but this is more informal today again, so anyone who wants to chime in, please do. One thing that's started to excite me a little bit is the number of factoid burns we're starting to see. I assume that it's related to PigNet, though we don't know for sure, but I believe that people are starting to burn factoids for PFAT, FCT. If my numbers are correct, I believe we saw the first burn around August 22nd, which is 240, and then 516 on August 25th, and then it jumped up to 1,500 on September 5th, and then a real exciting day on September 7th of 4,700 factoid burns. Except the price that day was equivalent to around 15 million entries on the protocol, which was pretty good to see. and so far there's been a little more than 1,000 today. Does anyone want to comment on the factoid burns, what their theories are, and what they think we might see going forward?
I mean, I think based on the chatter in Discord, it's clearly people experimenting with the conversions between factoids and pegged factoids. So yeah, no, I think that's really cool to see. I was looking back at the historical numbers, and this PegNet burning is almost already caught up with all of the historical burning of factoids, which is pretty amazing. If it continues at anywhere near this level, we'll burn as many factoids in this 10-day period as have been burned in the entire history of Factom. I mean, it's a pretty cool validation of the fact that like we're fundamentally changing the token economics of the system, right? Because we've had huge data sets that have been put onto Factom, but you know, with Merkle trees and sort of different techniques, you can be very efficient about the entry credit usage. And so what we haven't seen is huge factoid burning until this use case, right? But for PegNet, it's literally dollar for dollar, right? If somebody wants $1,000 of a pegged asset, they're burning $1,000 factoids. So, no, I think it's really cool validation. It'll be interesting to see as it ramps up. I think one of the milestones that we're looking for before PM2, I believe the last discussion was $100,000 worth of factoids to be converted into pegged factoids as starters seeding the system, if you will. So anyway, yeah, no, I'm equally excited about that development, and we'll definitely be tracking it pretty closely.
Now, one of the interesting dynamics of the burn and mint model that the Factom protocol employs is most people look at coin market cap. And interestingly enough, if you burn factoids, the overall supply goes down, which means unless there's a corresponding appreciation of the price of the factoid, the market cap actually drops. I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts on that dynamic and what we might see going forward as a result.
Well, I think personally that you know, the usage of the protocol is huge validation, and that's what people have been looking for. You know, I see burning that's done on BNB, for example, is very, very popular in their community. You know, they just did some huge burns recently of early token allocations for their team, and sort of every user that is using the fees on Binance, you know, is creating more usage for their tokens. And so I think that's the virtuous cycle that people are looking for. And it sort of validates that there's a real demand for these tokens. So, you know, I don't want to make any price predictions. I don't think we should get in that habit, but I'll just say that I think the market will take care of itself if we build real demand for the protocol. And, you know, that's what we've seen in all the other protocols. So that's my 2 bits on it.
Sure, and the key phrase there is real demand. And of course, exchange listings are critically important as well. Is anyone able to give any sort of update on potential exchange listings? Have there been good talks ongoing? Is there any discussion with potential users of PegNet?
Maybe Paul, if you want to talk to that.
Well, yeah, there've been a couple of really good conversations that I've had, both with remittance and managing capital controls in a few economic settings around the world. So I believe there's quite a lot of demand for this technology. I also have talked to a number of groups about the nature of the PegNet. A very interesting conversation I have with a group that's setting up a bank here in London. They were talking about the fact that they don't want to issue loans, that they're going to manage remittance and money transmission as a part of their business, and that they are setting up a bank. But they were concerned about what do we do with large deposits. So they're custodial, and they could conceivably have a whole bunch of MakerDAI but they can't loan it out, right? So what do they have to do something with the money, and I pointed out to them that they can do arbitrage on the PEGNet and provide liquidity to the market, and they could make significant amount of money. And this was really exciting to them because it answered a particular problem for how you manage to make money while providing liquidity to the market. So I believe this is these conversations are going really well.
Yeah, and actually, if I could chime in on that as well, I think one of the important conversations that the community has been having is about how to create, interoperability with Ethereum. Thinking of, effectively what PegNet is doing is creating state channels on top of Ethereum, and if you have that interoperability, I think that's going to be really critical to working with the exchanges. I was just visiting Europe, and I was meeting with an exchange over there, and it was very clear from understanding their infrastructure tech stack that adding a token that is interoperable with ERC20, ERC721, right, the standard tokens on top of Ethereum, really made it easy for them to integrate that project. And then it's a matter of days instead of a matter of months, right? And the amount of developer overhead is really significantly less. And so I think for PegNet success, being a layer on top of Ethereum, which Factom already is, it anchors into Ethereum for security, but also having more interoperability with PegNet, I think is going to be pretty critical for the success of people accessing the tokens outside of just running a Factom wallet or a PegNet wallet. So just wanted to pass along that learning because it was very eye-opening. Once you go into their tech stacks, the custodians all have Ethereum integrated, right? So if you try to convince any exchange to do something other than Ethereum, it's a really uphill battle because you're saying to them, I need you to talk to your custodian. I need you to convince them to upgrade the custodian's infrastructure. They may be using other backend software providers for matching books and liquidity and all these things. All those people have to do an update every time they support a new coin. Right, and so I think for the bootstrapping purposes of PegNet, interoperability with Ethereum is one of the big insights that I've had. That's going to make this a lot easier. I know that's coming in a future milestone. I think we've been talking about pM3 or pM4, and that's going to get hashed out. But I just wanted to pass that along. I think having that on the roadmap and having that as an expectation is really important.
So we talked about Ethereum interoperability, but the reality is that PegNet can probably be interoperable with a host of different blockchains. Once Ethereum is integrated with, I'm curious, David, Paul, and Julian, and anyone out there, what would be your second choice for blockchain to integrate with?
I hate to say it, but you could make a good argument both for EOS and you could make a good argument for something that Anton has been talking about, which is a gateway for Ethereum assets back into the FAT protocol. So there's a lot of integration paths here that are pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I'd echo that. I mean, EOS has a lot of the games and virtual items, people that need, very, very low cost transactions. There's also a big push with the tokens on Bitcoin Cash. That community is very friendly to tokenization as well. So yeah, I think between Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, EOS, the FAT integration, really being a multiple protocol network for pegged assets, that's a pretty awesome vision and gets us really close to those communities. And then we're just building on top and adding value. It's not a competitive thing. We're adding value to their systems.
Julian, what would your second choice be?
Yeah, I'd probably go for Stellar as a second choice. Pretty strong niche, super easy for developers to get started with, and it's pretty well spread worldwide. So it sort of opens up the PegNet as a market to a lot of people around the world very quickly.
Anyone else want to chime in with what their second choice would be?
Well, I mean, I'm going to chime in and just say that actually I believe the Stellar idea is also pretty stellar.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of tokens launching on Stellar. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially for micropayments. It's got an architecture that's good for that. So.
Well, Stellar's also beginning to launch a lot more reserve assets. So when you start talking about non-fungible assets or fungible assets, but with smaller markets, but backed by reserves, the Stellar makes a lot of sense because they look like they're getting a kind of a lead in that area.
So one question I want to open up for the people listening out there is, how do you suggest people get involved? If they're not a developer, what can they do to get involved in the PegNet movement to help move things forward at an increased pace?
I'd say mining. PegNet's just lowered the barrier so much. I mean, you don't have to have ASICs, you don't have to have GPUs, you could be running a laptop. I know there are a couple of groups working on mining software that will create a pool, which I think will be great. That'll even further lower the barrier. You won't have to be as technical or worry about price records. You'll just be able to point your laptop to that pool. And so I think that's going to be exciting. It's going to really open things up on that front. So, for me, the mining is sort of this magical thing where you can try it out, you can play with it, you can learn about the system in a tangible way. I mean, I remember, I think when I got into Bitcoin in 2012, over 1 million people had downloaded the Bitcoin node software, Bitcoin QT, from SourceForge, right? And that was the main wallet that people had, and it was their introduction to Bitcoin. And not everybody stuck around in the ecosystem, but it built this knowledge base of people that were excited about it, and later, oh, well, I should go grab those Bitcoins I mined in 2009, 2010, right? And so I think we'll see something similar here. So, for me, it's the mining. But, people that want to do trading and arbitrage, to Paul's point, that's great. This really opens things up because it's not a story about one token. It's a story about a whole network of tokens, right? So if you're a gold bug, burn factoids or peg into pegged gold, right? If you're all about a particular crypto project, all right, now you can peg into that particular crypto. And if you're in a particular country where you need payments, I want to do crypto, I want instant settlement, but I can't handle the volatility. That's probably why stablecoins have showed a lot of interest. So, and I did want to make one quick point. I noticed. I think it was when Steven or Sam was talking, they referred to PNT. Since the launch, the community just decided to update the ticker, at least for now, to PEG. So it's now PEG as the ticker. And there's debate about what we should do as far as naming convention, but just a note for everybody that hasn't been tuned in since the launch. That's an update.
And I wanted to also point out an opportunity that we'll have going forward with mining, and that is that because you can CPU mine, we have the opportunity to set up mining pools that rather than people joining to make money for themselves, joining to make money for causes that they believe in. Kind of like the SETI, people used to SETI mine or run SETI software to support, the processing of data from outer space looking for aliens, but also protein folding and some other distributed computational activities. But here with a PegNet, you could literally mine for the Red Cross and they would get dollars. and that's a massively interesting opportunity for us, because it means that we can further distribute the mining power over a lot more people and create more security for the network.
Speaking of mining, we've seen a pretty good increase in hash rate since we went live. Would anyone like to comment on that and theorize what it means for the future of TechNet?
No, it's definitely a prerequisite for us to have the network secure. So yeah, the more mining increase we see, the better. I think the Genesis block was 5 or 6 million hash per second, and now we're regularly seeing 25 to 30 million hash per second. So it's been almost a 500-600% increase the last few weeks, which is great to see. And I think we can get into this virtuous cycle where as the value in the pegged assets increase, it'll attract more miners, more people that want to add security, and as people see the security increasing, they're more likely to be confident in the network and burn more assets in. I mean, that's really the virtuous cycle that got going with Bitcoin. I remember back in the day, people were like, oh, how can you trust Bitcoin? There's only $10 million worth of security or whatever. But people trusted it enough to put more assets on it, right? And then eventually there was $1 billion worth of security, and now there's billions of dollars worth of security. So I think we can do the same thing. That's part of why it's so exciting that it aligns everybody's incentives, right? People add security to the network, people get rewarded for it, increases confidence in the network. It just gets that flywheel going. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to be involved in that.
I was recently performing an analysis of PegNet versus Maker and Dai, and came to see that Dai, you currently have a 16.5% fee in order to, in essence, obtain Dai and utilize it. And I don't understand why people would use something like that over PegNet once we improve the user interface, user experience, if you will. What's the benefit of using Dai with its 16.5% fee over something like PegNet? What am I not understanding?
Well, I would frame it instead as, Dai today competes against something like Tether. So I think it operates in a niche where, if people are skeptical of the, financial backing of Tether, then they're more likely to want a more decentralized solution. Even if it costs them more in fees, it might be a lower risk of default or some issue with Tether. So I could see people doing it for that aspect, and the same with the other reserve-based stablecoins, right? They're only as secure as the company that is holding that reserve. If there's a hack or the company goes bankrupt or something unforeseen happens, then you're taking some risk. So I think people that prefer to hold their own keys, to have less sort of external risk, are more likely to pick a decentralized system. And that actually bodes really well for PegNet because we can do both. We can not have a big fee and be fully decentralized. We don't have the reserve problem, and it's fully auditable, right? So I think as people see that, it's going to be really interesting to see the funds and the usage flow in for people that get that vision.
Well, there's currently around 78 million Dai in existence, if I'm understanding it correctly, and I'm sure they're at different rates, but I think it bodes well for the potential of PegNet that people are willing to borrow at 16.5% interest. I'd probably just use a credit card instead, personally, but once we get to a place where the experience is the same and people realize that there's no fees, it get pretty exciting. But circling back around to what people can do to get involved, I wanted to throw out that we've begun creating regional chapters for PegNet utilizing the meetup.com platform. And we currently have 6 chapters that we've created in Tucson, Phoenix, Denver, Austin, Sydney, and we're setting up Paris, France today. If you're interested in hosting a chapter, just go to the Regional Meetups channel on Discord and post your interest, and we'll get in contact with you. One of the important things is you do not need a deep technical understanding of PegNet. You don't need to even understand Meetup or how to organize one of these events. It's easy, and we'll walk you through it. And when you do host events, we'll make sure that there are people that have a deep technical understanding of PegNet video conferenced in for your meetup, so that any questions that you're not comfortable answering will be answered on your behalf. And that way, over time, we'll be able to build that knowledge base. You'll get to a point where you do have that technical understanding. You won't need those people calling in, or you might be able to then be that person conferencing in for other events. Having boots on the ground, if you will, around the world, where when someone is interested in PegNet, we could say, hey, you know what, we have an organizer in Denver, an organizer in Switzerland. If you want to sit down and have coffee with them, look them in the eye and be able to chat about PegNet on a more informal level, that's going to pay a lot of dividends for the ecosystem. So I really like to see people get involved and volunteer a little bit of time to organize a chapter. Provide you every level of support that you need so that you're comfortable.
Awesome. I think that's a great idea. Thanks for putting that together, David.
Absolutely. So with that said, I'll open up the floor to any comments, anything that, looks like Damien had a question. Damien Nichols. Yeah, I'll get to that. Damien asked, have we worked out any economic theory regarding what happens if a given key asset total increases to a significant percentage of the assets it's pegged to? Example, what happens if the total amount of P gold becomes 20% of the actual gold, or 100%? Does the demand for P gold negatively affect demand and thus the price for actual gold? Really interesting theoretical question. I hope it becomes a reality. That'd be pretty exciting. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question. What happens?
Well, it would be a pretty good problem to have. You know, there are $8 trillion of gold globally. And so, you know, if we can convert $8 trillion through PegNet, that would be wonderful. But on a serious note, I think we can look at some economic examples, right? There's the case of already ETFs and digital representations of physical assets. And in some cases, those markets are huge, and they already represent significant portions of the real asset. They're, you know, digital representations of oil and gold and all of these assets. So we ought to take a look at them. You know, I think there's some questions there, but I think it's far enough out that you know, it'll be a really good problem to have if effectively what you'd be doing, if I was just to take a broad stroke at it right now, is you'd be creating the new price center, right? Today, the markets where gold is traded, we're pulling the data from them, right? If PegNet ever got to a point where there were more pegged gold than gold, it may well tell you that, okay, this is the price, you know, maybe we should be building, you know, prices off of, you know, the assets that somehow people are giving price signals on top of PegNet. Like, we can't support that today because we're pulling data from the markets, but I think you'd have to build up, you know, sort of the ability for it to flow back, right? Where there's price expectation here, where people are holding the majority of the asset, and maybe that flows back somehow. But that'll be a really good problem to have once we get there. So, and I think we can get there. I mean, I believe that the world's assets will be tokenized. They'll be digital. Everybody knows it's going there, and so it's a huge opportunity for us to win. And so, you know, well, it might take a few years, but we're going to get there, and that's really cool to think about.
So I agree. And one area not sure I necessarily agree is I think it might actually happen sooner than later. For more illiquid assets, you know, gold is going to take a while. U.S. dollars, maybe a little bit longer. But something like the factoid, which
Hmm.
currently is that liquid, I can actually see it happening in the short to medium term, where there's more liquidity on PegNet than on the exchanges, and it almost becomes a reversed arbitrage situation where people look to what is the price on PegNet for the factoid, and then they start arbitraging to correct the price of the factoid on the existing exchanges. I don't know. It's pretty mind-bending to see how it goes, but I think we might see that transpire in some of the more liquid assets sooner than we thought. But
Well, factoids in particular is a very interesting example because it's one of the gateways to PegNet, right? So the very success of PegNet is likely to add to the liquidity of factoids, right? As people see the real demand, obviously that will, have an effect on the market liquidity, and so that's going to be really interesting to sort of see the dance as they interact. But yeah, I mean, I could see the example as something smaller like Ravencoin, right? It's 130 million market cap. It's not a gateway to PegNet, so it's not going to have those same dynamics. But yeah, people may well look, especially if we develop a really good reputation for averaging the prices, picking the best data sets. We're averaging across, different data sets from all over the world. We may well end up with a reputation as being the best pricing for a particular asset. So that's going to be an interesting cycle because they're looking at us for the average, but then, like you said, they're looking at the other exchanges. Somebody's a little off the average, they'll probably arbitrage that. So, but I think that's actually good. That's a whole sub capability that I think will develop over time, is all the pricing stuff. As that gets more robust, people will look to us for Oracle prices. And the cool thing is, it's not abstract Oracle prices, like you're saying. It's something they could act on immediately because there is a token that is fixed to that Oracle price. And if that is seen as the best average price, then yeah, you could see a lot of arbitrage being based off of that. But I think that's the goal.
see that Niels Klump of Surion, one of our previous panelists, was able to join us after all. Good to see you there, Niels. I was curious if you had any general comments on PegNet that you wanted to throw out for us there.
Oh, wow.
Put you on the spot or anything there.
Oh, yeah. I missed the first part. I was in the car. So I don't know what you guys talked about, but we're getting close, of course, to milestone 2, and also seeing the enthusiasm in the Discord channels and seeing all kinds of new faces. That's one of the things that I like about it most. A lot of new interest in this type of technology, which is of course new, but also seeing that Factum itself can really provide, to be honest, quite easily a complete new use case. If you compare it, for instance, to MakerDAO, the fact that in only, well, of course, I know Paul has been spending a whole lot of time on it and others as well. But if you look at it, and we're now only something like 2 months in, I guess, something like that. And see that we're getting close to getting transactions and conversions. Yeah, that's really exciting to see.
Yeah, that's maybe something we haven't covered yet. Is because we have this solid foundation from Factum, we are essentially able to leapfrog these other projects, right? Maker is native to Ethereum and it can only, exist in that context, right? Whereas Factum has so much data scalability, individualized chain IDs, all of the rest, all the work that people have been doing on the Fat Asset Protocol and the wallets and everything else. And so, I think having that solid foundation, like, it's just letting us run really, really fast. So it's cool and refreshing, and because sometimes it takes years and years to build these systems, but since we have a different architecture, we can just move at a speed that that others can't. So it's going to be fun to keep that rolling out. And one thing that we already covered, and maybe set the expectations for the next call, is we'd love to do another one as soon as we have a final date chosen for the launch of pM2. And so I think the developers are all working to finalize the tasks involved in that. Carl and Stephen and Sam and Alex and everybody else. And so, maybe that will be another good reason to jump on the call, and we can post in the community when that's going to happen. But it looks like it'll be fairly soon.
You mentioned the that protocol, the Factor Method token protocol, which Julian Fletcher Taylor is one of the chief architects. Julian, you're a very creative, intelligent mind. I'm curious. I'm sure that you've been pondering potential use cases going forward for PegNet integrated with that. And I know that integration is ongoing. Have you further pondered potential use cases for PegNet? And I know you're also talking to a lot of businesses out there. Have you begun mentioning PegNet at all? Where are you at with PegNet and that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I see PegNet as is basically a liquidity engine for tokens on Facton. Tokenization, it needs liquidity. It needs to not be siloed. That's extremely important. You can create these token projects, but if they don't really interact with other projects, if for example you have dexes but there's not liquidity on chain, which we're seeing across pretty much every dex right now, like even the popular dexes, you're seeing like $10,000 worth of liquidity per day. PegNet, because it's built as this non-slippage conversion system, we could actually see a lot of liquidity on PegNet itself, which means that all of the other projects running on that, they have this sort of like a ball of liquidity within PegNet that they can dex to, that they can mirror tokens of that project into PegNet and gain a lot of liquidity from that. I see a lot of synergy there. And then, it's really the kind of thing where, because we're building all of these technologies to be interoperable, the wallets will be, the smart contracts will be, the DEXs, if a system takes payment for PegNet or takes payment for that, it's really exciting to see all of this growing together. And so far, we've talked to a lot of businesses around the world about PegNet at this point. And there's a lot of confusion about what it is. We need to. I think it's important that we have really clear ways of describing what PegNet is, which we're developing, and it's really great to see. Like video, and that'll be really important because it is sort of an abstract system. It's hard for a lot of people to get their heads around. Interestingly enough, also some people we talk to kind of look at it as, and their first reaction is like, if I'm launching tokens, here's this like parallel system where like tokens of mine can be mirrored there. How does that interact with my system? Do I lose market cap of my system, etc.? And that actually has been a concern for some people that we've been working with. That their market cap will be lower because this is parallel system, which it's similar to what gaming is often. And what we sort of have to go through is that these systems will exist. There's constant innovation in this space, and it's happening so fast. These natural evolutions of these systems, going fully decentralized, building these interesting arbitraging mechanisms. You have to be able to adapt your project and make it competitive within that sort of constantly evolving landscape. And having it on Facton, having it on Fat, at least it brings it closer to all of these projects and lets us actually really work with it and get the benefits like it being a liquidity engine, and understanding how it's going to evolve so that these projects in fact can evolve with it. So, and generally, after going through all of that, companies, they start seeing the merit. They get excited about it. It's been really great to see over and over again.
Thank you, Julian. Now, Julian, WeGrow recently released a proof of concept WebAssembly smart contract on Spectrum Asset Token Protocol. And Niels, you and your group, I don't remember if it was Spirion or BI Blockchain Innovation Foundation, released a video showcasing YAML smart contracts utilizing the Spectrum Asset Token Protocol. Do you see any synergy with these new smart contract systems?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry if I'm going first, Julian. So, for instance, the video we showed, actually I posted it yesterday, I believe, is demo smart contracts. In this case, running on demo on X, which is basically a reference implementation. But demo itself can run on multiple ledgers, and those typically are permission ledgers or private ledgers. But the funny thing here is that basically we implemented a FAT integration into it, meaning you can have smart contracts where you, for instance, can transact FAT tokens, for instance, on Hyperledger Fabric or another supported ledger. And in the future, we will also support, of course, conversions. So also PEGNet tokens and PEGNet conversions. This is only step one. The next step would be to have a proper demo on Factum. But the fact that we now, in the video, and I urge everybody to look at it, one of my colleagues, Scott, who speaks much better English than I do, he's a native American, so, well, not native American, he's American. He explained it pretty well with a nice use case where, for instance, somebody has to approve a transaction happening on FAT. And of course, well, you can come up with all kinds of use cases with smart contracts, doing conversions, doing approvals, etc. So really excited to see that coming together.
So Niels, let me see if I understand this correctly. In the not too distant future, I might be a large supplier utilizing Hyperledger.
Yeah.
And I want to sell smart contracts in gold, if you will. I could come to the Factum Asset Token Protocol, use a demo smart contract, use PEGNet, and while still using Hyperledger, I in essence can settle my smart contracts in gold. Do I understand that?
Yeah, that's correct. And actually, demo is being used, for instance, by traditional exchanges. I believe, for instance, the Hong Kong exchange and an Australian exchanges are using demo. It's being funded and approved, or yeah, how do you call it? Giving the OK stamp and having seen investments by a lot of banks, for instance. And right now we have this bridge basically between demo running on whatever supported blockchain or ledger architecture they have, and that, and of course we will be expanding that. So yes, it's really cool to see that coming together.
So in essence, we're pretty close to interoperability right now.
Well, of course, it's not like you have an integration, for instance, from Hyperledger transactions or whatever itself. So this is really about FAT tokens and FAT transactions, or PEGNet transactions in the future, and PEGNet conversions. But the fact that you can have your smart contract running somewhere on a separate ledger with all kinds of input and all kinds of logic in there, and then doing FAT transactions or having FAT inputs, yeah, that's really exciting to see. And it shows that we do not have one single ledger to try to do everything on there. You will see more and more integration of separate ledgers through standardization, through integration. I think next few years we will see more and more of that happening.
You might be on mute,
Yeah,
David.
and then,
Go ahead, Julian.
oh yeah, and then for WASM as well, full interoperability with PEGNet tokens, which means that you'll be able to write a contract in WASM, pilot and push it to an entry on Factom, and now you have decentralized control over PEGNet tokens on the address. And this is something I don't think it can be overstated how potentially profound this is. Smart contracts provide a way to control assets in a decentralized manner, and in a fully auditable, programmatic way. And PegNet tokens are pretty much the most decentralized form of asset conversion and way of creating value that we've ever seen. And so you marry these two technologies, and you have a fully decentralized way to control a flow of value of these tokens that themselves are fully decentralized, extremely liquid. I mean that will be the most decentralized and liquid way of controlling a value flow that I think the world has ever seen. And that's truly incredible. We're actually getting with this, I think, close to sort of the vision of what this sort of decentralized tokenization is supposed to be. It's extremely exciting.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm getting excited.
I'd like to build on what Julian was saying, because I spent 3 days with a group that is a massive standing in the regulatory space. They're the group that invented the suspicious activity reports within their confines, and a bunch of other innovations, if I can put quotes around that, in the regulatory space. And they're saying that there is no such thing as a distributed organization or a distributed exchange at this point. They're all centralized, and they point to various components, and they have a good point. When these aren't stupid people. They recognize where there is, in order for these things to keep running, there's this set of parties or this organization that's actually performing really critical roles. But with the PegNet, we have actually figured out a way to construct it to be truly decentralized. There's one other aspect of this, and that is we've always known that central banks had enormous power by being able to create assets out of thin air to create liquidity as demanded. But we also recognize, when you look at these things, that they're very often, you can question the fairness of how this liquidity is created, and whether this is really democratic, spread out across the people that's what I mean by democratic, spread out across the economy, or is it favoring just really certain people? And I think they're open to that criticism. With the PegNet, we've actually figured out a way that you're qualified to create liquidity because you actually have liquidity to begin with. And after you've created liquidity in some other sector of the PegNet, you've done that at the expense of liquidity somewhere else. And so actually, I think we have this architecture to provide the services that a central bank does, but guarantee that the provision doesn't have a special party, doesn't give one person an advantage over another. So I think this is really pretty powerful. And I just want to say that it kind of builds on what Julian is saying here.
Thank you, Paul. So I'd like to open up the floor for closing thoughts, any quick questions from those in attendance as well.
Yeah, I'd like to know about the user interface. You touched on it briefly with both David, I think, about how people are actually going to interact with it. And I'd love for you to know where we stand at the moment with conversions and transactions and how people actually go about it. I think at the moment it's just sort of command line, and I'd love to know where we're going to stand and develop some sort of wallet or POC for transactions, because I think would really help with adoption.
Sure. So I can speak to that. Yeah, today, the goal is to get it out the door in command line form for both conversions and transactions. And the truth is, a lot of the people using these systems are developers, but we want to open it up more and more. And so that's part of why we've talked about the integration with FAT, because FAT has an existing wallet. So as soon as PegNet assets and Peg tokens are reflected in the FAT wallet, then all you have to do is download a FAT wallet. And so then you've got a GUI, a visual representation, makes it a lot easier to push the button, do a conversion, push the button, do a transfer. Right, and so that's our short-term path. And then a little bit later down the road, as we have this mirroring, as we've talked about, of PegNet assets with Ethereum assets, now you're in every Ethereum wallet that supports ERC20, ERC721. And it also becomes easier for other major wallets to add us because they already have Ethereum integrated. So I think that's sort of the short-term plan is let's get into the FAT wallet. The medium-term plan is, let's go ahead and push through with the Ethereum integration so that we're in existing Ethereum wallets, and then that'll help with exchanges and other wallets that sort of do custom integration. So that's what I think the immediate path is. But I agree. I think that's going to be critical. The other thing people can do is create websites and interfaces. Somebody could create a website come the launch of pM2 that download this source code, connect to this mining pool, and you're rewarded with pegged gold. You could literally turn electricity into digital gold. That's incredible. That's beautiful. And so, but it's not so much on the protocol to create those interfaces. We need members of the community to jump in and create the gold website, create the silver website, whatever a particular audience that they want to go after. That's how I think a lot of the interfaces are going to get built up.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'd just like to also ask about as I'm a non-tech guy, I'd love to ask the tech guys, how difficult is it to obtain a different software solution to set out? Whereabouts does it fall on the roadmap?
To be honest, it's not that difficult at all because basically that has a certain set of endpoints you need to implement. And those really aren't the hardest endpoints in the world to implement. And well, maybe Stephen can contribute to that. I think that the guys from PFA are working on some integration within, for instance, their Explorer and maybe even in my custom wallet as well. But maybe I'm speaking a bit for Stephen right now, so I'll let Stephen do the talking as well. But it's really not that hard to create an implementation. We've done it, for instance, for the e-citizenship solution in the Netherlands, which will be going live next month as well. And well, we started running, I guess, customers, I don't know, probably 6 months ago or something like that. I don't know the exact timeline. And it really wasn't that hard. But,
yeah, as far as the PFA Explorer does have fat balances and fat tokens listed. That is integrated into both the testnet and mainnet, and it was fairly trivial to work with. Pretty straightforward as long as you're not there's some API differences of the non-fungible and fungible tokens, and I imagine there might be some quirks with the PegNet one, but as far as the common tasks, they're very easy to work with.
Yeah, and Colin, are you
Do
talking
you have
about
a
interrupting?
timeline before?
Oh, no, go on, Paul.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, do you have a timeline before you show the peg factoids, since there are some out there?
Well, so we'll have to, when that integration happens, the tokens should automatically show up in the Explorer.
I think I've already seen some drop down somewhere in the Explorer. Am I wrong? Or?
No, so you'll see the burn factoids, correct, but I think Paul wants to see, so if you go on the Explorer, it shows you the market cap with every single token.
Well, I'm more interested in when I look at the burn address, seeing a count of peg factoids instead of it just being a fee. I mean, I know the fee is peg factoids, but I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Anyway.
if I'm putting that into there, but if you actually go on the factor method, like each token has an issuing stage, and in there they have a total token supply, a circulating supply. I imagine that when Pegnet with that protocol, that you'll actually see the supply of every single asset on that asset's issuing stage, which I think would be very interesting.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That'd be cool.
All right, great. Well, I know we budgeted an hour for this. David, any thing from your side? Just want to respect everybody's timeline that they're expecting. So
I just wanted to quickly circle around to what Colin was talking about, how it's critical that we have a good UI and user experience. And so many blockchain platforms out there are just knockoffs of each other. They're not exciting to really build for. There's not a lot of innovation. Right? I think that the argument is pretty strong that Pegnet has serious innovation and leapfrog existing technology. In some ways, I feel the excitement that I did back in 2011 when I entered the Bitcoin ecosystem of, wow, there's so much opportunity to stretch UI heads development-wise, because there's so much opportunity for those people that are willing to take the minor risk to have a huge reward at the end of it. Because so much infrastructure can be built to be supported. These are early days, and those who are willing to take that little bit of risk to have that first mover advantage, this is the time to jump in head first, in my opinion. If we're right about the future of Pegnet, those that take that little bit of risk are going to have some great things to say about.
awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to see like a working group set up or something towards doing that. If we can provide a POC for transactions, for payments, for example, or some sort of wallet on a mobile which you can do as a trading platform to mimic, so that we aren't matching ourselves against another cryptocurrency. We're matching ourselves against two trading platforms or FX or other assets. I think we can really set ourselves quite far ahead of the competition.
Yeah, and I think as much as we can get existing experts in those spaces to do that, it's going to cut down the time dramatically.
And I think the funny thing will be that we are able to soon, of course, integrate smart contract functionality and hopefully identities as well, which if you combine that together is a really powerful combination for us.
Yep. Cool. All right.
All right. A very last remark, or shall we call it a day at the 1 hour mark? All right, I'm going to take the lack of comments as calling it a day. Fantastic conversation. I'm glad that we did this. David Johnston, thank you for pushing us to have another chat. And thanks to everyone who showed up and everyone who had input. Y'all have a great day.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.